There are a few franchises that I've shockingly never ventured into despite years of interest and widespread acclaim from said works long before I'd even begun this channel. A lot of popular things that you'd expect me to have already seen, I just haven't. And one of those well-known franchises is the Monogatari series, the light novel slash manga slash anime series that's been going on for pretty much 2 decades now, with one of the most spread out fan bases in all of anime. People know it for its characters and storytelling and unique visual language, and even people that have never seen Monogatari know it for either its popular openings or its rather interesting reputation online. You see, Monogatari is known to be a rather odd anime to get into because it's kind of been tainted with the reputation of being one of those shows with very odd, deviant shenanigans going on, especially from the main character. And while those things are definitely present in the show, I'm gonna try my best to just not talk about it because, for one, YouTube and audience rules and such, but also because outside of the initial shock value of it, while it's still rather weird, I just don't really have much to say outside of that. It's kind of just part of the series, and you can't really do much about that. You gotta take what you're given. Yeah, the show is kind of weird, and the main character is kind of a creep. That's all you can really say, especially when you're as early into it as I am. I'm literally just into the first series. Mono also is known for having a bit of a complicated watch order, as it was released in very interesting formats, with every individual season, mini-season, and movie following a different name with differing positions in the timeline that may not always fit in with the original light novel timeline. If you just go by release order or even by order of the light novel titles, you still might miss something. And that's another thing that kind of keeps people away, but thankfully I was given a good watch order to watch the series by a lot of friends, and now I've officially begun my journey. That's right, everybody, I've officially become part of the Monogatari Club, having binged through all of Bakemonogatari within just a week, as I spent each day watching every individual segment broken up into parts. It was easy to spread out what episodes I would watch considering the way the arcs were structured, so one thing I can already compliment the show on is how well it presents itself to outsiders despite its so-called complicated order. If you want to binge it, then just go ahead and binge it, but if you want to watch a couple episodes then go on about your day, then you can simply watch each arc as they're titled in the season. They're short, pace very well, and still tell a dense individual story without giving you much of a headache. I would go arc by arc for my review, but I kinda gave up on that as some just didn't give me much of an opinion as compared to others. Which isn't to say the arcs are inconsistent in quality, but not all of them give you the same impression, and not all of them give you a lot to think about, since they're very much building up to something else. But I do want to go over our introductory arc as it is the most important one that gets us introduced to our central characters, Hitagi Crab. So this is our introductory arc of the series where we are introduced to all of our central characters in the story. And you know, even with the series' reputation, I'm sure it'll start out just normal and fine like most anime with the level of controversy. The first minute is a panty shot. You know what, we're gonna do this another time, guys. I really wonder what my friends who watch these videos think of me when they see that this is the shit that I watch. You know what, I set myself up here. I can't even complain. I knew what I was getting into. I just didn't think it happened right now. It's even more funny because past this first minute, this isn't even something that occurs within the rest of this 2-parter. I mean, yeah, there's a scene of Hitagi undressing for Araragi, but that scene is far more ironic in how it uses the revealing and perversion of the character in order to both display character and display comedy. At the beginning, it happens. But, you know, I'm gonna move on. I don't want to talk about that. It's not that big of a deal, it's just a minute. In this arc, we meet Araragi as he discovers Hitagi Senjogahara, a girl he's been going to school with for years and only just recently discovered that she has become one of many phenomena in this world, with her deal being that she's almost entirely weightless. She's light as a feather. Her clothes are heavy on her. She carries a bunch of school supplies she uses as weapons. Doesn't really relate to that, but still. And the cause of it is unknown. All we know is that this all occurred when Hitagi encountered a mysterious creature resembling that of a crab. This brings them together for a team up to go find Meme Oshino, someone who helped Araragi in the past, to help her confront the demons that brought this curse onto her. To begin things off, I want to talk about the visual presentation of Monogatari, which is something I'm sure many have already talked about, but whatever, I won't be so saying anything new about this series anyway, so let's go over everything I like as unoriginally as possible. From the moment the show begins, you're struck with a very unique display of introspective presentation as you're brought into scenes that are relatively quiet, ambient, and focused on environment and time, but as you cut to closer shots of characters, you'll be cutting between those shots and screens of color and text displaying short sentences that act as the inner monologues of the characters we are focused on. They're very quick enough that in most cases you don't actually get to read everything, but I still find this very intriguing and strangely effective too. Even though I don't always get to finish reading out what they're thinking, I get a good feel of what these images represent for the characters well enough and I'm able to follow them much better because of it. And with how fast it is, we're able to cover a lot more of the actual events in the story without focusing on inner dialogue. Of course, there still are moments of drawn out monologues and voiceovers, but they're handled sparingly with these text segments taking up most of that focus. They serve a lot of different purposes, which is something that I noticed while watching it, so it's not just monologue stuff, but they are very much used mostly to give us a closer look into the characters we're following. I can't really explain why I like it so much or why I find it so effective. Maybe it's just because I really like unique stylistic decisions that you don't really get out of any other show. And this is exactly what that is. It kind of reminds me of a Godard film, which I'm sure many of you have definitely watched a fucking Godard film before, but the intercut of text is something that I like a lot, and I like how it's utilized here very much. I spent quite a bit of time talking about this one thing, but yeah, I just really like it. The visuals are, of course, very striking. There's a heavy mixture of very bright, warm, and calming visuals drawn out and very dark, moody, and grimy ones together that make for a world that feels split in two, which seems to be something that this show is very focused on in general, both in terms of world and characters who always seem to have a second side to them. I could be misreading this entirely and just jumping to conclusions, so just correct me if I'm wrong, but the way the show looks at the beginning in a regular high school compared to how it looks when they go to visit Oshino, you can see a very clear contrast in the environments that look almost like they're in a completely different show. That isn't to disregard a lot of the other cool methods Mono uses to display character and introspection without having to say too much through unique visuals alone, whether it be through paper cutout stop motion or very exaggerated movements that you wouldn't really see anybody do ever. It's very unique in how it presents everything. I'm no expert on animation, so I don't want to talk too much in depth on something I'm simply just an outsider to, but where I usually dislike overly glossy character models and worlds, Mono has them in a way that feels kind of right. These characters, from what I can tell, are rather fragile people, and the glossiness gives them that inner feeling of glassy fragility. The human body in both its beauties and grotesqueries are also a major focus as well, and the glossiness actually adds a lot of emphasis to the characters' models and designs that doesn't make it look ugly. It has a lot of personality to it, and I can say for sure that there is just not another show out there that looks anything like Mono does. So I have to give it props to that. This show looks so different and unique from anything else I've seen before. But enough about the stylistic choices, we can talk about that more later. I really do want to express just how strong this opening arc is because it, well, kinda shocked me. I knew that Mono was known to deal with some more heavy themes and deals with subject matter that many may not be comfortable with, but I didn't expect it to jump into such topics from the very get-go and hit so hard. But hey, when you need to make an impression, you need to let people know what they should be expecting, and that's exactly what they do here. Whilst Araragi's character arc is a bit unbeknownst at this point, Hitagi is contextualized and crafted very multi-dimensional from the get-go, with a heavy-hitting and emotional introductory arc that deals with trauma, victim guilt, and familial grief that really took me off guard. At first, her character was very ironic, acting out in ways that almost seem defensive, and as you get to the climax of this two-parter, that suspicion is confirmed as we see that Hitagi had been cutting herself off from all emotional attachment to the things that made her once so full of grief. But now she wants those memories back, even the bad ones, as even though it won't ever bring the people she lost back, and won't ever change what she went through, everything she once tried to disconnect so hard from still holds some value to who she is, and she doesn't want to let go of any memory she has left of her mother now that she's no longer there. And I find that very, very touching. I won't go into personal stuff because that's a whole different video entirely, and a very heavy one at that, but I really related to Hitagi on a deep level here, and she's already become a big favorite of mine after just these 2 episodes alone. Of this whole introductory section of Mono, she is very easily the strongest part of it all, and I love her character a lot. I'd say that her relationship with Araragi is one of the strongest aspects of this show, which makes sense as it is the foundation of everything here. The show just doesn't work if you don't like this couple. Hitagi has this subtle yet snarky attitude that makes you second guess what she's really feeling and what her true intentions are. She's very unique, but that's what makes her special, and as the season goes on, you see Araragi fully realize and fall more and more in love with her for this uniqueness and her character, and they bounce off of each other so well. He didn't save her because he loved her, as he would have helped anyone in the same position, but saving her was the first spark for the both of them, and I really love how their relationship develops from the beginning arc to later on. Hitagi is a character I can relate to a lot, and the exploration of her love for Araragi and her desire for him, despite how tainted she initially feels on the inside, is something that I found to have hit me quite heavily. She's definitely my favorite character of this show because she's the one character I found myself connecting to the most. And despite his rather odd shenanigans in this show, I do think Araragi is also a very, very solid protagonist. Early on, it's established that he has experience with these sort of things, and his only true goal is to make sure no one ever has to go through that again. Even if a character is in the wrong, such as when the boy who placed the snake curse on Nadeko is threatened by the curse as well, Araragi would still prefer to take the burden onto himself rather than let anyone else get hurt in his place. He's willing to take everything onto his shoulders for everyone else's sake out of what could be a lack of self-value, or perhaps because he's just that selfless. Regardless, it's a noble but unhealthy life he leads, and that's why he has Hitagi to keep him in check. Otherwise, he probably would have gotten himself killed by the episode 6 mark if he hadn't had her to stop him from attempting to take everyone's pain for himself. It's an attempt to be so selfless that you eventually become more selfish in the process, and that's something frequently acknowledged by himself and the other characters, because this way of living is simply not sustainable for him. So while he does do some very weird things within the show towards certain characters, he's far too interesting for me to not be invested in him. Plus, he has far more good moments than bad, even if he is a weird, creepy idiot at times. And let me just say, Mono has an amazing supporting cast, with each arc following the apparitions and curses of each individual support character. This means you get a lot of substantial interactions, background, and developmental time for pretty much every character here, even the ones that aren't the central character of the arc. It's very tough to pick a favorite. I really do like Nadeko and especially Kambaru, but for pretty different reasons. Mainly Kambaru's though, because I think her interactions with Araragi are the most fun. She is literally a mirror of him and he's completely unaware of it. She's also a Fujoshi, which is fucking hilarious since she's a lesbian. She's easily the funniest character in the show, but even outside of that, I like her for how helpful and loyal she is to her friends. Her unrequited love with Hitagi and her jealousy of Araragi, despite not truly going away throughout the show, was especially fascinating during her introductory arc. Also, seeing her beating the ever-living shit out of Araragi was just maybe a bit satisfying to watch. You know, honestly, it was very satisfying. Yeah, it was very satisfying to watch. Unrequited love is actually a very heavily recurring theme in this show. It's pretty much the central theme in two major arcs, those being Suruga Monkey and Tsubasa Cat, which just so happens to be two of my favorite arcs in the show. Throughout the whole season, you get build up for the suppressed feelings Hanekawa has for Araragi, and whilst it's not difficult to tell her feelings on the outside, she hides it in a way that feels so convincing as a viewer, to the point where you can almost feel the pain she must be going through to have to hide it all. To have to be supportive of a relationship between someone you're in love with and someone you don't truly know. It sure is a tough pill to swallow, and you can see in Hanekawa's dialogue, and eventually through her cat form, that she cannot bring herself to accept it. Everyone in Mono is selfish in their own subtle ways that they don't even discover, and it's through their denial of this selfishness and inability to face it that they begin to curse themselves with burdens they don't need or deserve. Repression and pursuit of purity are all something that especially the women in the show have in common. And these apparitions are their ways of letting out what they've been building up for years, not even just Hanekawa. It's like that for everyone, and exercising these demons, in a way, letting go of that standard that no one but ourselves are holding us to, is a way for the show to present to us that it's okay to be selfish, to feel like you deserve something over someone else, to want something that you sometimes can't have. It may not be fair, but that doesn't mean we need to just hide everything we've built up inside. I really wasn't expecting this much introspection respect and feminism in just the first season of the show, but I was pleasantly surprised at how strong of an opening season this was. From the variety in style, using old school character designing to make the comedic bits funnier, to the unique introspective visualization of characters' self-actualization moments, and the rather stunning yet gritty world design, Mono puts something in your eye that really no other series does. There just isn't a show that looks or feels like this, nor is there anything that presents itself as Mono does. I could be speaking too soon, but it really is very great so far. Bakemonogatari is a pretty great show. It took until about episode 12 for me to finally fall in love with it, but when I did, well, it hit me pretty damn hard in the heart. And now I can't say I'm anything other than excited to continue the series. I've especially heard nothing but amazing things about the Monogatari movies, so I'm especially looking forward to that. After all, that's the very next thing I'm going to be getting into, and you guys can expect a video on the movies very, very soon. But with that being said, that is going to do it for this video. If you enjoyed it and want to see me talk about Monogatari more, then leave a like and subscribe to the channel, as we are continuing to grow very, very fast, and I'm very happy and excited about that. Comment down below your favorite Monogatari character and your favorite season, and with all that being said, that's all I have for you guys. I hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful day.